Good morning. We are live here with Coffee with Humans. My new friend, Trevor Newberry. Welcome to Coffee with Humans.
Thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here.
So I'm in Northern Illinois. I don't know where you are. Where are you at?
I am in Birmingham, Alabama.
Birmingham, Alabama. Okay, school me on the geography of Alabama. Whereabouts is that?
That's actually, it's funny that you asked that question because Alabama is weird. So I grew up in northeastern Alabama, where there are just the very foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. So I kind of grew up a mountain boy, right? Northern Alabama, kind of into central northern Alabama. As you get into the center of Alabama, that kind of those hills kind of the mountains turn into hills. And as you go even further down, so I'm in that central Alabama now. As you go further down, you get into sort of like flat farmland. So we call it, like, a lot of it, we call it the Black Belt down there. There's a lot of farmland, very flat. And then we have a beautiful like white sand coast at the very bottom of the state. So really like runs the gamut. It's a pretty cool state in that regard.
That's awesome. Have you been to Illinois at all?
Yes, only Chicago though.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
only Chicago.
Illinois is not like Alabama.
No.
There are a couple places on the far south side or far south end of Illinois. There's a river, and it kind of gets like almost wannabe mountainous, like valley type stuff. And then most of Illinois is just this flat cornland.
So my mom grew up in Indiana. In a little tiny town called Monticello, Indiana. Like, you can just about hold your breath driving through it. So we would often go to Chicago from visiting my grandfather in Monticello. So that whole area, that sort of Midwestern cornfields, flat, I'm very familiar with that topography as well.
Yeah. So Birmingham, give me a scope of Birmingham compared to, let's say, Chicago. What's the size like?
It's a much smaller city. I don't even know that it really ranks in terms of the largest cities in the country. It is. I wish I could pull the population out of my thin air, but I can't. It's a really interesting city though, because it's the largest. I believe it's the largest city in the state. So it's where all of this sort of the urban cultural kind of mashup happens. It's a strange kind of very blue bubble in a southeastern state, right? So it's a very banking, healthcare, a lot of technology, which is the industry that I work in, software and technology. It's just a really neat place. I really like it because it's a big enough city to satisfy what you need in terms of like dining options when that's a thing, bars. Lots and lots of people, different cultures coming together in this area, but it's also not massive. It's not overwhelming like a Chicago can be, or like a New York City can be, or, God love them, LA. Not my favorite places on the planet to spend a whole lot of time, because it's just, even if it's not overwhelming, they can just be exhausting just to move about in. Right. So Birmingham's not like that. The other cool part about Birmingham is that we're 2 to 3 hours away from Nashville, Atlanta. There's an international airport here. I mean, my wife and I, when traveling's back to normal, we try to get to Europe once a year if we can. So we can hop a flight 10 minutes away from our house. It's not expensive to take an Uber and get dropped off and head over to Europe. So it's a really cool city. But the main components of it in terms of business would be healthcare, banking, software, technology. But it's interesting. I guess I'm failing to describe it well, because Alabama is such a generally rural state, and Birmingham is this like sort of urban weird oasis in the middle of all that. So it's a neat place to be. Yeah,
that's awesome. So Europe, huh?
Yes. My wife and I, we've been married now for almost 9 years. And in the last few years, we started taking a yearly trip over to Europe, specifically Spain, but we've hit different areas in the process. So we've gotten pretty good at catching these like $100, $200 regional flights. So we can spend a week or so in Germany, but we have a city in Spain that we always try to spend a few days in if we're going to be on the continent. So,
wow, that sounds like fun.
We love it. It's great. Yeah.
So something to look forward to each year to get over to Europe. Let's say I was to come to Birmingham, where would be like the place to eat?
See, that's also, you see, you're asking hard questions. Um, Birmingham has a reputation as a food hub in the Southeast.
Okay.
Um, it's not a massive city, so it's not necessarily the volume, it's the quality. So we have a very well respected, highly awarded chef named Frank Stitt that lives here, and so he's got 3 restaurants. So if you want to spend a lot of money, go to Frank Stitt's places. So that's going to be Highland Bar and Grill, Bottega, Chez Fonfon. Chez Fonfon's actually a little bit different. It's you can get in and out of there affordably. If you're going to take your wife on a date and do, cocktails and wine and appetizers, meal, and all this stuff at Highland Bar and Grill, you're going to spend $250+. Like, it's a very
Okay.
nice restaurant, right? But then it goes all the way back down to, we have, new entrants into the city like Rodney Scott and his barbecue business. Really amazing stuff. Rodney is one of the preeminent folks to really start moving barbecue forward, taking sort of the older traditions and start moving that forward in a cohesive way. So that's really good. But one of my favorite places is El Barrio. So that's a sort of a Mexican style restaurant. Excellent. There's just really good food here. So we could do a whole hour on that, honestly.
It sounds so exciting. When I mean, you're like, I don't feel like I'm explaining Birmingham so well, but honestly, for a guy who's stuck right outside Chicago, I'm thinking Birmingham, let's
Yeah.
do this.
I will say this. There are 2 cities in my life. I'm not as well traveled as it maybe makes me sound. We do the Europe thing, but otherwise, there are 2 cities in my life that I would recommend anyone spend a weekend in. I think Birmingham's an excellent weekend place. The other one is Columbus, Ohio, which was a shocker to me. My parents moved there
Okay.
for a job, and that's the other city that I always tell people, you probably haven't thought of Birmingham and you probably haven't thought of Columbus, but they're a lot of fun. Both of them are great cities. So definitely a good, like, fly in on Friday afternoon, do Friday night, Saturday, maybe an early Sunday thing, and then fly back. Yeah. It's great.
Okay. Huh. All right. I'll keep that on the radar.
You should do that. Yeah.
I would, so if you were to come to Rockford, I don't know that we're known as a food hub.
Yeah.
We are known for being between the major cities of Milwaukee, Madison, Chicago, and if you wanted to, and as you know from knowing the Indiana, Ohio area, if you're traveling west or east along the northern parts of the U.S., you're going to go through Rockford or around Rockford.
Yeah.
If you're going to get to Minnesota or something like that. So, the major interstate I-90 runs through there, and I-80 is just not too far south, 45 minutes, hour south.
Yeah.
But
how far are you from all those major cities?
About an hour and a half.
Oh, wow. That's a great spot then.
If from a affordability standpoint and a accessibility standpoint, Rockford has it going on.
Yeah.
From a food standpoint, I would say there's one guy who's kind of made his mark in downtown Rockford, Paul Sletton. He started with a concept called Brio, which was a kind of a fine dining place. And then that turned in, it changed names, but right next door, he opened up a thing called Social, which was a cool concept for Rockford. It was epically different for Rockford, not so epically different for other cities, but we tend to catch, we're in the Midwest. We catch some of these things.
Different is relative. Yeah.
Yeah. And Social was this idea of like just a big communal table where you'd sit down and you're sitting right next to, a person that you don't know yet.
Sure.
And sort of riffing off of what they're doing, but it's a totally different vibe when you're sitting in a place with a stranger.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
that's really
fantastic
cool.
Drinks, though. I tell you, if you like drinks, Social, they've figured it out. They've got a lot of good drinks.
Maybe we'll try to get up to the Chicago area soon. My wife Abby is always telling me I have to. I've been to Chicago several times and love it. It's one of my favorite cities in the U.S. Despite the windy and despite the cold, I love it. But she's never been, so she's always telling me we need to get up that way.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think Chicago should be on everybody's list.
I do too. It's a marvelous city. It really is. I think I think it might be my favorite metropolitan city in the U.S. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And I haven't spent nearly as much time there as I'd like to, but yeah, it's just a great place to be. I love it. And I like the Midwest. It's one of my favorite parts of the country, which is a weird thing to say. Because most of the time people think about the Midwest and it's like, well, there's cornfields in a couple of cities speckled in there, and they're not wrong, but it's a different culture. I grew up in the Southeast, which has its own distinct culture, and I tend to identify with that Midwestern sort of aesthetic, if you will, a little
Yeah.
bit more than the Southeast, even though I've spent my entire life here. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
So you're in software in the Southeast, which is
Yeah. hmm Which is,
how's that?
so here's the interesting thing. I thought to say this earlier and I didn't say it. The reason that I can talk about food is because my background is in food and beverage.
Oh,
I came from the world of hospitality. I ran restaurants, I ran bars. I was actually a professional chef for a while, bartender, coffee roaster, barista. If you can eat it or drink it, there's a good chance that I've put my hands on it and done something.
wow.
So the first 10 years of my career was spent that way. So when I started my consulting company, I had a really big goal to get out into software and technology. I was sort of an amateur enthusiast. It was something that was really, really interesting to me. I knew the nuts and bolts of running a business, but I did not know the nuts and bolts of running a software business. So I really just made it a goal to try and learn that and break into that industry. So, what's interesting about what I do, and the reason that that's really fun for me now is that I'm not a coder, so I don't build software. I work with sort of the touchy feely human side of software, right? So the way I describe myself is I'm a product management consultant. So I help people that are building software understand how to get in touch with their customers, how to understand their customers, how to run tests, how to do like early concept validation before they spend a ton of money building a software product because it's super expensive.
Yeah.
So the work that I do is jumping in with these first time non-technical founders, these early stage products, and saying, pump the brakes. You got a good idea, but we need to make sure this idea is worth pouring gasoline on. And usually gasoline looks like $150,000, so it's high stakes. So it's a lot of fun. And Birmingham has just a fantastic technology ecosystem. So it's known as a tech hub in the Southeast. There's Austin, Birmingham, New Orleans, and there are other cities that are doing really well with it, but those are the ones that like people really talk about. We've just our city, and so our public and our private partners have just put a lot of money and a lot of effort into building up that ecosystem here. So it's exciting. There's always, I feel like a lot of times I can't keep up with it. Even in Birmingham, where I turn around and it's like, whoa, there's a new startup. That's a cool concept. Look at that new app that's being launched. So it's a lot of fun.
That's cool. I love this sort of energy. Do you see? I've spent some time in software development through the years, and it would seem to me, having spent no time running restaurants,
Yeah.
that project management and thinking through how to develop a software app is part. I mean, if we'd had a corollary to restaurants, it's part how good is that food gonna
Mhm.
be created, but you can't, but you also have to expedite it out the front.
Mhm.
And it's the how can we maintain quality and
Mhm.
produce an end result, but also have all these kind of positions and priorities that are
Yeah.
jockeying to be able to get it to the table.
So this is something that I tell people. Having a background in hospitality or food and beverage will do nothing for your resume. And if you're trying to get into software technology, right? No one draws those lines like you just did there. However, it is probably one of the most valuable training grounds professionally writ large if you spend the time with it. So I didn't just, serve, wait tables, bartend. I got really into the management side of things, into the logistics side of things, into, product rotation. How do we stock enough raw materials without it going bad to make sure that we're serving enough? All of these logistical, really business intensive processes. I spent a lot of time with that. And so when it translates to software and technology, there's a direct and an indirect. The indirect is that honestly, I believe that if you can hack it in hospitality, if you can hack it in food and beverage, you can hack it just about anywhere. I mean, we're all selling widgets. You just need to learn the specific nuances of the industry or the type of product that you're moving into, which is a process, but it's doable, right? It's learning. Directly speaking, for me, what I found the most valuable is that it teaches you how to interact with people in a really, really quick way. So it teaches you really good intuitive interactions with people. When you deliver software to a cohort of, several thousand, early stage testers, right? That data is going to start coming in, but it's probably going to come in over the course of a week or 2 weeks, and you're going to have a tool that analyzes it, and you can sit down and look at it and start make decisions. When you're in food and beverage, you give somebody a sandwich and they have it in front of them right then. That feedback, that interaction is right there. It's right in front of your face. And so nerves of steel. If something's not right, you can't hide behind a computer. You can't hide behind a weak, timeline of analyzing data and making metric driven decisions, which are very, very important. But you learn to read a room really quickly. You learn to understand what I call I was on a podcast a few weeks ago. We talked about it's not about the sandwich. You learn how to dive deeper really, really quickly into like what's really bothering a person. So maybe it is about the sandwich, but maybe it's that they had a really bad day. Maybe it's that it's raining outside and they forgot their umbrella and they're just irritable. So you learn a lot of those soft skills that for the work that I do in product management, it's invaluable for being able to get in front of people or, in COVID times on a Zoom call and ask questions and really be able to dive deeper to be able to pick those questions apart and get to the heart of what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I agree with you. It seems, like in software development, a lot of people create a piece of software and then they throw it in front of the user and the user looks at it and all of a sudden they're not, quote unquote, eating it. They're not using it. And the person who made it is absolutely in love with the concept, the idea. And they're like, this is the best thing ever. It's the best sandwich I ever made. And it does kind of teach you in that moment and I can see how it's very valuable to be in hospitality first. That teaches you that, not everybody likes what you like. Not everything is usable in the way that you thought that it was going to be usable. And whatever worked, in your palate when you were testing it against all of your family and friends, you put it in front of that stranger who's coming in. Does that mean you change the product? Or does it mean that you don't change the product because you deal with that user and you have to, go deeper? It does. The nuances, it seems, are directly applicable to a lot of industries because it's about process.
Yep.
I think, what processes do you follow to be able to deliver whether it's a sandwich or whether it's a piece of software, or whether it's, a television.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We have a saying that I have to remind a lot of my clients of often, because the problem we run into is what you just described. Everybody thinks that their baby's the prettiest, right? And, some babies are just ugly, that just is what it is. They grow into it, but that's just the fact of the matter. But we use this phrase a lot of, learn to love the problem, not the solution. Yeah. So really what we try to reframe that process as is you are passionate about solving a problem. We need to shift your focus away from like, I'm super passionate about this particular piece of software and onto I'm passionate about solving this problem. And when you make that sort of frame shift, that sort of mindset shift, it becomes a lot easier to say like, oh yeah, okay, let's rewrite this. Let's go and do this an entirely different way because I think this is going to solve the problem better. That is a much, it's not just touchy feely. It's a much more practical and successful, or the likelihood of success is much higher way to approach building a software product. Yeah. And again, that's a lot of fun to do that work. I really don't have any interest in sitting down and writing lines of code. That's not my thing. And I don't think it'll ever be my thing, but I don't think that these problems will ever go away. I don't think that the problems of customer driven work and empathy will ever leave. They'll never leave the process of building new products. So.
Yeah, I was talking to some folks yesterday, or not yesterday. It was last week. I think it was early last week. And they're building a software application, and I do some mentoring for some accelerators. And and I said, guys, I don't think you really know what the problem is that you're trying to solve, because for this customer base, they don't care about the feature that you have, and then for this customer base, they're not going to pay for the thing that you built. So And I said,
It's a tough spot to be in.
right.
Yeah.
And so I said, what's missing for me is this like fuck yeah moment when
Mhm.
people use your application. I said, you know, you guys are programmers. Think of like what if you go to Google and you type in a, you know, something you're trying to resolve code wise. I said, you usually stumble across a site that just gives you the answer right away. What is that site? And they're like Stack Overflow. And I was like, yes. You know what makes Stack Overflow effective? They've got a ton of information. It built there for years, which is great. But even when they started out, it was an easy way to take a deep dive into solving
Yep.
one code problem that you have, and you walk out with a solution. And
Yep.
every time you go to that site, you're like, "Fuck yeah!"
Yep.
And I said, and when your user goes to your application, I don't think they have that moment right now. And I said,
Yeah.
and you don't even have that moment. So
Yeah.
until you get to that moment, you're just kind of wandering, putting together all of these features just because you can, just because you're
Mhm.
interested in it and are
Yeah.
neat. But nobody's going to fall in love with that. The you know the big problem and the big solution that you have because they're just not walking away with that feeling.
Yeah. And I think what you just described is also something I've been thinking a lot about. The whole industry of software development, I think, is at it may take 10 years for this to play out. It may take 5 years, or it may take 6 months, but I think it's at a turning point because you have a lot of technical prowess in the market, and you have a lot of money in the market, but you don't have, I just noticed this earlier when we were talking about the work that I do. I use the phrase product management, and you said project management. And that is indicative of, I think there's a gap in the market of people that do this kind of work. So what we try to do is be this sort of like orchestra conductor of sales and marketing and development. So I do some project management, right? But someone needs to be there to say, like, I'm getting in front of the customer, and then I'm also helping coordinate that with the sales team, and that I'm also helping coordinate that with the marketing team and with the development team. I feel like there's a big gap there, and I feel like the most successful products, whether their success being relative, they have someone or some people on board that operate in that capacity, because you lose that human, like you just were describing. They just lost it, or never even had a human side of that. Maybe what they built was technically impressive, but you didn't have that fuck yeah moment, right? Like you were like, it's not there, and if it's not there, no one's going to pay money for it. So, and back to sort of the coding thing, there's so many low and no code tools on the market now that I think there's going to be some downward pressure on the development environment too. I mean, some of these are getting pretty good. They're not going to replace actual custom development, not at least in the short term, but a lot of these folks that I work with, these development shops, are making a lot of money building MVPs for people. Well, that's going to go away, with Bubble and Recode and all these tools out there. You can build a functioning MVP, get it out the door, and start testing, get paid for it too, not just a prototype. You can do all that work now without ever talking to a software development shop. And that's going to put downward pressure on that entire section of the market. So,
Yeah, I think so too. And also, it seems that in in software development and also in marketing of uh, software products, it's a lot of volume coming out now. I mean,
yeah,
the volume is increasing. I don't
yeah,
want to say
it is.
exponentially because I don't think it's increasing exponentially is
It's wild.
technically,
Yeah.
but the volume of products that are being released seems to be increasing,
Mhm.
and it's more of kind of survival of the fittest
Yep.
uh, instead of where it used to be distribution was such a big issue that
Mhm.
it was kind of like, well, there's Microsoft and then there's Apple, and nobody ever heard of Apple, and Microsoft just
Mhm.
became this big behemoth. Well, now it's like, well, everybody's producing something all across
Yeah.
the world, and
Mhm.
distribution is just readily accessible, and therefore I think the ability to test drive things and then come up with and iterate that all of that whole cycle, I think, is moving so quickly
Yeah.
that the investment, like you're talking about, the investment has to be rethought in a lot of different ways. um
Yep.
you know so I think that
I
idea of test early, release early, release often, and just test it and see what sticks, that seems to be the
yeah.
cycle.
And that survival of the fittest, pardon me, element of it, I think is a really great, I think is a really apt way to describe it. And that's a lot of the work that I'm doing right now. What I find so exciting about the market is helping people be the fittest, right? And that's hard. It's honestly, I'm not going to lie, like selling that to clients is really, really hard because most people, especially if they're non-technical or first time, they just want to go, they just want to build the thing. They just want it out the door, right? They just want to build an app and get it out the door. And then when they do that and no one buys it or no one uses it, it's so disappointing to them. It's crushing to them. And they probably spent way too much money on it. So, a lot of this work is really trying hard to get in front of those folks and say, pump the brakes, man. Like there's a lot of stuff that we can do before you spend a dime on developing anything to make sure that you're as fit as possible before you get to that stage. Yeah, because it's like it's a just there's so much stuff getting thrown against the wall right now. It's wild. Yeah.
It seems so. There are kind of extremes that exist, at least with the folks that I've worked with. The extremes of like mid-market companies that are really
Mhm.
into customer, voice of the customer type stuff. So
Yeah.
they build something, they do a real quick beta, clickable prototype, and then test against customers or potential
Yeah.
customers. Get all that feedback, incorporate it into the clickable prototype, and then release it later. And then there's kind of the smaller, like you're talking about, it seems like the startups of the world and the first timers who um it's the simultaneously like I'm in love with my concept. I think it's great. And therefore everybody else is gonna love it too.
Yep.
And also I kind of this idea of what's the end result here? Am I gonna or what's my path? Am I gonna get investment to
Mhm.
grow this really big, or am I going to build this and then exit somehow? It seems like they're different growth mindsets
Yep.
from the inexperienced to the experienced.
100%. And, in some ways, I think that's even when people are asked, like the folks that I work with, when they're asking those questions, I think it's a little cart before the horse, to be honest with you. Like, I mean, it's good to know what your trajectory is and the direction you want to go, but we got to build something that someone cares about to begin with. And
Yeah.
and I hate to keep circling it back there because I think you're absolutely right. Um, but I do think that one of the reasons that I'm so passionate about the work that we're doing, I say I have two different companies, but um, is because software it's been everywhere for a long time, but that's only becoming more and more prevalent. I mean, people entire industries work on software now. If the trading floor in New York has a glitch, right? Like we have systemic problems, right? We have like massive social, financial, systemic problems. Uh, That being said, I think it's the natural place for a lot of entrepreneurship to be taking place. And I feel like there's people that don't know how to code, that don't know how to build, that are not technical or that have never done it before that are really, really poorly served by the ecosystem as it is.
Mm.
You either need to join an accelerator, and I love accelerators, and I'm like you, I volunteer at accelerators and do mentoring, but usually those are somewhat selective. A lot of times there's money involved, which also means there's equity involved, and I'm a big believer in retaining ownership as much as possible, especially early on, because that ownership, assuming a successful product, is a lot more valuable in the early stages, right? So I just think that the ecosystem doesn't serve those folks very well. And so I'm really passionate about saying, okay, I don't care if your background is in sociology or politics or food and beverage or whatever. If you're passionate about a problem and you have the means or you're willing to put the means into building this product, you want to take that leap. I believe that we should be building more services and products themselves that help those people because that small businesses, we hear it all the time, small businesses are the engine of the economy. Well, I mean, this is a huge area where small businesses can and should be taking off, right? So we need to be serving those people well, and much better than we currently are because it's not going great as it stands. So
Isn't it?
yeah, I cannot tell you how many like just really tragic stories of like I spent $200,000 on this and no one wants it. And it's like, oh my God, that just breaks my heart every single time. Because for most people, if I put $200,000 into a product and it didn't work, I'd be going to McDonald's and getting a job. Like I'd be out of money. Like personally and professionally. This just, yeah. Anyway, those things are going to happen, but I like to think that we can do more work to reduce the instances.
Yeah, it would seem so. Well, I really like the concept, or I'm not sure if it's really a concept, that might be overreaching, but I like the path that you've been on from the restaurant industry, and then transporting some of that knowledge into software development. I'm a big believer in looking across industries to find processes that work and methodologies that work, because they are so transportable from one to the next.
Absolutely.
And too often we become myopic in our viewpoint, and that, I think, constrains us, especially as industries change, because each industry changes at a different rate. And I think that if there's a lesson about disruption, most disruption comes from somebody outside the industry into the industry and breaks the status quo. Because everybody in the industry most people in the industry didn't see it coming, or when they did see it coming, were too afraid to do anything about it.
Yeah.
So I love that storyline. I think it's great.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. And it's, I'm not going to lie, it hasn't always been easy. Like I said at the top, having a background in hospitality does not engender you to the technology ecosystem at all. People are like, well, it's okay. You can cook me a burger. So what are you going to do with my software product? That was really, really hard to dispel. That was really hard to get over that or get past that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
well, yeah, that's cool. Well, before we go any further, you want to play a game?
Sure.
Okay, great.
Let's do it.
I was hoping you wouldn't say no. I don't like games.
I do.
That would be awkward.
I'm not always very good at them, but I do like games.
All right, so we're gonna play a game. I'm gonna pop it up on the screen here. We're gonna play Watch 'Em and Draw It. I think you're gonna be great at this. I have a feeling.
Ooh, I'm not artistically inclined, but we'll give it a go.
Gives me better chances of winning.
Yes.
So
what I mean when I say that, it's stick figures are difficult. So.
Oh, good. This is the game for you.
Good.
Here's how this is going to roll. I'm going to put up on the screen. It'll go something like this. It'll be draw a frog sitting in a canoe headed for a waterfall. And then we're going to have 1 minute to draw that. We're both going to draw it at the same time. And then we'll have to share our images to the screen. And then we can vote between each other. And then our viewers online can vote as well in the comments. Okay. So that's how it's going to roll. We're going to do 3 of these, and then we'll crown the winner at the end. Okay. All right. Are you ready for our first one?
Better now than never. Let's do it.
Okay. Draw an angry banana chasing a happy grape around a bowl of singing cherries. Draw an angry banana chasing a happy grape around a bowl of singing cherries. You have 1 minute now.
Got it. This is hilarious.
The challenge is figuring out how to know that the cherries are singing. Right? I mean,
yep.
I feel like that's drawing action. That's like level 2 for me. La 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 la.
I've got multiple drawing devices here.
You have 24 seconds. Oh, this looks like a sad banana, not angry. 3, 2, 1. Oh no, I didn't complete this at all. I feel like this is too short for a minute for this one. I don't know.
That was pretty hard.
That was very difficult. All right, so I'm not going to put you on the spot. I'll put myself on the spot first. Here's my.
Right, let's see it. Hold it. I get it a little closer. Nice.
Oh, there we go. That was my. I don't think that banana looks angry. I think he looks sad.
Mine is similar, actually. So it makes you feel any better.
All right.
All right. Oh.
Angry banana. Oh, nice. Yes. See, that's great.
It's okay. We got through it.
That was a difficult one. I feel like there's too many elements.
That was a difficult one. Yeah.
But you know what? This is directly applicable to software development. What do you develop first, and what do you cut for time?
Yep, exactly. I don't know if I did that right then. I didn't think about it like that.
I didn't either. I just put it together now.
Yeah.
I got hung up in how do I show that their cherries are singing?
Yep.
All right, next one. Ready?
Let's see.
Draw a hot dog with mustard, ketchup, stinky socks, and a bowling ball.
Got it.
Hot dog with mustard, ketchup, stinky socks, and a bowling ball. You have 1 minute now. Doon, 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 doon. Are the socks on the? Oh, I'm not even gonna tell you. I'm not even gonna tell you. You don't. I'm not gonna give you my secrets.
I don't know how with a single color pen. I don't know how you differentiate between ketchup and mustard.
Oh, you just gave me an idea.
Good. Self-sabotage is always the best.
10 seconds. And that's time.
All right. I know we're live, but are we recording this?
This is recorded as well. Yeah, it's up on YouTube.
I'm going to show my wife this, who is an incredibly talented artist, and she will.
You totally should. She's going to love it.
Yep.
You're going to be her favorite again.
Again, we're getting there.
It's been 9 years. I'm sure it ebbs and flows. All right.
Yes, it does.
Here we go. You got to go up first this time. I went first.
All
last
right,
time.
cool. So
I feel like I took the easy one
this
last
is
time.
weird.
Oh yes. So is the ketchup the back, the little stuff on the back?
Take your pick. I just had to differentiate between the two, so I drew a different shape.
Oh my god! All right, I'll
get one more piece of paper here. There we go.
All right, here's my hot dog with mustard, ketchup, stinky socks, and the bowling ball.
You did the ketchup and mustard bottles. That was smart.
When you said how do you differentiate, I was like, oh, M and K.
Oh man, this reminds me of an exercise we do with clients. We won't ruin the fun now, but yeah, this is actually more fun than I expected it would be.
See, this is applicable. There's so many things. Just drawing connections.
Yep.
All right.
Last
one, and then we can crown the winner. Let's see here. Draw a dragon playing with a piece of string. A dragon playing with a piece of string. You have 1 minute. Dragon playing with a piece of string. Oh, that's not a dragon. I think that's a T-Rex.
I mean, the difference is marginal. You've got wings.
Well, that. Oh, I don't know about this. Let's see here. 25 seconds. Dragon playing with a piece of string. How is he playing with a piece of string? I don't quite understand.
I think they have hands or arms.
They
don't have hands. They don't have fingers.
I don't know.
It's a mythical reptile, Trevor.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Well, this is the most frightening thing I've ever drawn.
I feel like I could have done better on this. All right. Okay, so I guess I got to go first.
Yeah, you first.
Oh boy. All right, here we go. A dragon playing with a piece of string.
That's good. I think you win that one. Yours actually looks like a dragon.
I had to put fire in his mouth because I felt like that was a big indicator of dragonness.
Yep. Yep.
Without
All
fire,
right.
I felt like he was a T-Rex. Minus the
Well,
wings.
speaking of,
Oh, yay.
here we go. Nightmare fuel.
It's a happy dragon. Well,
Happy dragon with like housefly wings.
who wouldn't be happy as a dragon if you're playing with a piece of string?
That's a fair point. I feel okay I've got a piece about all of this. I'm okay with it.
Is this not going to eat into your the rest of your productivity
No,
today?
I just lost 3 clients.
They're like, I knew he couldn't draw.
See the dragon that jerk drew?
All right. Well, I'm not sure who wins. I wasn't keeping score, but Robbie is listening on LinkedIn. Says both art is awesome.
That's very kind of you, Ravi.
Yes, that's super kind. If anybody else has any comments about our terrible drawing skills, you're welcome to put them in the chat.
Yes, indeed, but be nice. Actually, don't worry about it. My art's terrible.
Yeah.
It's okay. You can tell me about it.
Totally.
Yeah.
I've become, I have a little bit of an edge on you because I've become better about drawing quickly.
I was going to say, you do this with multiple guests, don't you?
I do.
Yeah, you do. It's okay.
And I don't really double up the.
I watched a couple episodes in preparation.
Did you?
Yeah.
You're like, what am I getting into?
And I enjoyed them, and I was not surprised to be asked to draw.
Oh. Did you? Okay. Well, I'm going to have to change up the game then.
Yeah, come up with some different games that you can throw curveballs at people. That's a lot of fun.
I've only been playing that game for a month.
Yeah. Well, it's good. I like it. It reminded me, there's a game we play with clients called Crazy Eights. It comes from the Google Design Sprint, where we're thinking about a concept. You basically take a piece of paper and we fold it so it creates 8 different sides, and you have I can't remember the exact amount of time, but you have a limited amount of time to write as many different solutions to the problem as possible. And it's sort of like a brainstorming exercise. And it kind of reminded me of that. And we were talking about like, oh, you drew the ketchup and the mustard bottles. I didn't do that. It's like all of this creativity sort of shakes out of that process. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. And then do you find in that process that there's that you filter them later and you figure out what kind of the confluence of what solves the problem and what can actually be made given the constraints?
Yeah, we try to, it's part of the process of convergent and divergent thinking. But yeah, we put it through a filter, and sometimes we'll do it a couple of times. We'll filter that down to like, here's a cool solution. Let's actually break that down even further. We'll do that a couple of times over. So yeah, it's a really cool exercise. Yeah.
Okay. So for our listeners who are not familiar with convergent and divergent thinking, can you unpack that a little bit?
So think about it this way. Convergent, if you've got a solution, right, or an idea, concept. Convergent, you've got ideas coming in, right? So you're going out and you're doing research and you're bringing things in about that particular problem and that solution. Divergent is where you're taking it and we're actually going out. We're taking, okay, we've got enough research. We feel like we have a handle on the concept or the problem or the solution, whatever it is that we're putting in the center of that, fictional diagram. And we're doing like Crazy Eights. It's where we're just spitting out as many different ideas as possible. And you use the two in tandem. What's interesting about that is that a lot of this is work that a healthy, well-rounded mind would do instinctively. But a lot of times we find that like you're learning more and more about me. I have a degree in political philosophy. I worked in hospitality and I have a degree in political philosophy. So I'm fairly well-rounded. Not everybody is like that. And it's not a personal slight. It's just not everybody gets that sort of range of experiences throughout their professional life, their education. And so it can be really eye-opening to go through that process, those two practices, using them together. We gain a lot of understanding about a problem or a solution or a concept. And then that enables us to turn around and say like, okay, let's just spit out ideas, right? And it's a quantity over quality sort of approach, right? Because we can take those and filter them down and get tighter with it as we go along. Yeah.
Okay. That's awesome. So we're coming up at the end of our time here.
Yep.
I think that was a great, valuable explanation and some like takeaway. I don't always look for takeaways for people.
Sure.
But it seems that that's a good takeaway for our viewers and listeners. Mm-hmm. So how do people get in contact with you if they are interested in what you do?
Sure. So my two companies both have email addresses which are totally usable. Newberry Consulting, which is sort of a more traditional, one-to-one consulting practice, and then we're actually about to launch a new product called AppThink, which will package up some of these product management principles and deliver them at scale, sort of in a cohort model. So that is being worked on right now. We're hoping for late January, early February to have an MVP out. But Trevor at newberryconsulting.com or Trevor at appthink.io, not .com, because that was $55,000. So we got
really?
IO. Yeah. But either of those work. And actually, so the latter part of those email addresses, AppThink or Newberry Consulting, on pretty much any of the social media platforms. You can find us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. I even have some Twitter accounts for those, but they don't really get used. But you can send me a message there. Yeah. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, Trevor, it's great to know you.
Yeah, likewise. This was a lot of fun.
And I will, if I'm down in Birmingham, I'll be sure to stop at some of those restaurants. I'll have to review the tape and get them again. But I am a foodie, and so I'm down with trying to do good things.
You could do a whole weekend in Birmingham. You could do a solid 2 days in Birmingham. I think would be perfect for that. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah,
well, thanks to our viewers and listeners. This has been Coffee with Humans. Check us out next time. Thanks, Trevor.
Yeah, thank you.
One of the things I love about Coffee with Humans are the raw conversations I get to have, meeting new people just like you. If you or someone you know should be on Coffee with Humans, go to coffeewithhumans.com. Remember, the only rule is no sales calls.
This has been Coffee with Humans. Subscribe to get updates or click to have coffee with me. coffeewithhumans.com.